Well, hello there and welcome to this video on pivot tables in Microsoft Excel. Just going to go through the very basics of pivot tables just to give you an idea of what they're for and basically how they work. So here we have some data, and this is data on airline profitability in 2010, and as you can see it's split down here in column A by quarter. So you've got the quarter in column A, you've got the carrier, the name of the airline, in column C, and then in column E we've got the overall grouping, which is either national passenger, major passenger, or major cargo, and then we've got the profit, the operating profit, in column F. So this is perhaps not the most useful table in its current form. You know, it's kind of difficult to work out what's going on. You've got quarters all kind of mixed up and all this sort of thing. So in order to simplify that and in order to make a bit more sense of it, we're going to make a pivot table. So if we just make this in a new sheet, and we just add a new sheet there, we go up to Insert and then click on Pivot Table. And now it's asking us for the range where the pivot table is going to look for its data. So if we just go back to the Data tab and just select the whole lot of the data, just with the column headings there, click OK. So now you'll see there's an empty pivot table here, and we've got the contents of our data range over here, and some options for where to put those different, well, they're basically the columns from the data we selected. So let's first get an idea of the overall profit of each one of the carriers. So not split by quarter, getting rid of that quarter split by just putting carrier into the rows there. And you see when we do that, we now have column A now just has a unique list of all of the carriers in that list. And that can be quite useful just on its own if you've got a list with a lot of duplicates in it, that sort of thing, and you want a list that just has, you know, individual unique values in it from that, then just follow the steps that I've just done, and this is that basically in column A. But we're going to use it for something a bit more complicated. So if we just grab the operating profit and put that into the values, then you'll see we've now got a count of the operating profits for each of these airlines, which is not what we're looking for. We're looking for a sum. So just click on the little arrow there and value field settings, and then just change that from count to sum. Click OK. And now we have, you see in column B, the totals of all those separate quarters for each one of the airlines. And, you know, that's quite useful on its own, but perhaps we want to split it down by the overall grouping as well. So if we just grab the overall grouping, we can put that into rows there. And now we have a section for each airline. And then below that, we have the overall grouping listed. But what might make it a bit more useful is if we had that as a column, so we can take that overall grouping and put it into columns. And now you see you can read across and read the grand total, or you can read down for each one of the categories. So we can see that, for example, major passenger had that value total for all the airlines, and, you know, so on and so forth. And you'll see that it's got some blanks, and we can just, if you see here, and also down here, we've got some blanks because obviously we selected the entire column, so, and there was blank cells at the bottom, so we can just go into here, into the little downward arrow by row labels, and just remove them from here. So just click there, and then the blanks are gone. We can do that for any of the carriers or any of the column categories as well. We can sort as well by using that, and also do searches and so on and so forth. But as you can see, that's a much more useful display of the data. And we can select the whole thing if we want to and format it in the same way that we would format normal numbers, normal cell values. Put columns in, commas in. Just select them and just make it a bit more readable. And then you've also got up here the pivot tables menu with various options. I'm not going to go into them all at the moment. The sort of more useful stuff that you can do is well, as ever, kind of found on the right click menu. We just right click here and go to the pivot table options. You can do various things in here, layout and tools and so on and so forth. But what I'm going to look at here is the display tab. And if you click on classic pivot table layout here and click OK, this basically goes back to the sort of pre Office 2007 pivot table style. And obviously it changes the layout slightly with what we've got here. But if we go back to the way we had it laid out before and just drag down the overall grouping into the rows, you'll see that it's a different layout. And the good thing about this layout, as opposed to the other, the newer layout, is that you've got each field in its own column. So you've got carrier and overall grouping in two separate columns, as opposed to being kind of stacked and then offset in the same column. So what that means is if we right click here on one of the totals rows for the carriers, we can untick the subtotal and give ourselves basically a nice list that we can then copy and paste and take out of the pivot table format and use for other stuff. So we can then start writing formulas or whatever next to it and use it in other data, which isn't really possible with the new layout, because it kind of precludes that. So if we just compare this to the new layout and kind of undo, and there you see everything in column A. So if you were to copy that to somewhere else, just do a copy and paste special, just the values, then obviously this column has a mix of the carrier name and overall grouping in it, which isn't much use at all, and column E has duplicates of all the values. So yeah, it's a useful trick to know, to put it back into classic mode, just to be able to then copy it out and use it elsewhere. So that is the very basics of pivot tables. It's very much worth kind of going through the menus up here, these two pivot table specific menus, just to have a look at the different formats that you can use and so on and so forth, and the various options here. But yeah, that's the basics. So yeah, thanks for watching.